I remember the first time I saw my mother cry over a stack of bills. I was 19, home from college for the weekend, and I found her sitting at the kitchen table with her head in her hands, the lamplight casting long shadows over the numbers she couldn't make sense of. The divorce had left her with nothing but a two-bedroom apartment, a mountain of debt, and the kind of quiet desperation that only a mother could hide behind a smile when her kids walked into the room. That image never left me. Even years later, when I landed my first real job in corporate finance at 25, I could still hear the way her voice trembled when she said, "We'll figure it out," like it was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. So I made a decision, without a word to anyone, not my brother, not my friends, not even her. I started paying her rent. $2,400 a month, silently deducted from my paycheck before I even saw it. I told myself it was temporary, that once she got back on her feet, I'd stop. But 4 years passed. 96 payments, $115,000 I never spoke about, never expected back, never used as leverage. I just did it, because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You carry their burdens so they don't have to. I'd sit in my tiny apartment after 12-hour days, staring at my own bills, my own dreams deferred, and I'd think about the way she used to braid my hair before school, how she'd stay up late helping me with math homework even when she was exhausted from her double shifts. Those memories were my armor. They made the sacrifice feel holy. I convinced myself that this was just another way of saying thank you. For the sleepless nights, for the meals she skipped so we could eat, for the life she built for us out of sheer willpower. But here's the thing about love: when it's one-sided, it doesn't just cost you money, it costs you pieces of yourself. I never told her because I didn't want her pride to outweigh her relief. I never told my brother because I didn't want her pride to outweigh her relief. I didn't want her pride to outrun T. Now want him to feel guilty for living rent-free. On day a tree. That my love could be measured in direct deposits and unspoken loyalty. And then the bottom fell out. Pause. Breath shaky, but voice steadying with resolve. I'll tell you what happened next, but first I need you to ask yourself something. How much of your own worth have you tied to the people who were supposed to love you back? How many times have you bled for someone only to realize they never even knew you were hurting? Stay with me, because this isn't just my story. It's the moment I learned the hardest truth of all. Love shouldn't require you to disappear. Why this works for your voice profile: 1. Emotional and resolute tonality, raw vulnerability. Though, I remember the first time I saw my mother cry paired with quiet strength. Yo, love shouldn't require you to disappear. Point 2. One same person intimacy. Direct address. You'll ask yourself something, creates a confessional, personal bond. 3. Intense, transformative energy. Starts nostalgic, builds to a breaking point, ends with a provocative question to hook the audience. 4. Narrative authority. Details like 96 payments, $115,000, ground the story in undeniable personal experience. 5. Call to action tease. The closing lines prime the audience for reflection, setting up the next chapter's conflict. 6. Seamless flow. Childhood memory, silent sacrifice, foreshadowing the betrayal, all while maintaining emotional momentum. Next chapter setup. The stage is now set to dive into her struggles post-divorce, with the audience already invested in the paradox of your devotion versus her obliviousness. The contrast between your memories of her resilience and her eventual reaction will hit harder because of this foundation. Here could sow the raw, unfiltered truth about my mother's struggles after the divorce and why I chose to carry her burden in silence. I remember the night Dad left, like it was yesterday. The house smelled of burnt coffee and stale perfume, the kind Mom would drown herself in when she thought no one was looking. She sat at the kitchen table staring at a stack of bills so high it looked like a Jenga tower, one breath away from collapse. I was 22, fresh out of college with my first real paycheck clutched in my hand like a lifeline. She didn't ask for help, she never did. But I saw the way her fingers trembled when she shuffled through the past due notices, the way her pride fractured just a little more each time the phone rang with another collector's voice. That's when I made my decision. She'd worked 2 jobs after the divorce, waitressing by day, cleaning offices by night until her body gave out. I'd come home late from my own shifts and find her asleep on the couch, her shoes still on, her uniform wrinkled like she'd been defeated by the weight of it all. One evening, I overheard her on the phone with the landlord, her voice cracking as she begged for one more week. That was the moment something inside me hardened. I couldn't fix the divorce. I couldn't erase the way my father had walked out like our family was a lease. He'd decided not to renew, but I could make sure she never had to beg again. So I started paying, not with fanfare, not with a grand speech, just quiet, consistent transfers from my account to hers, timed like clockwork on the first of every month. I told myself it was temporary, that once I climbed the corporate ladder, once I proved I could stand on my own, I'd tell her. I'd show her the receipts like evidence of my love, and she'd finally see me, not as the kid who'd watched her cry herself to sleep, but as the man who'd pulled her back from the edge. But temporary turned into 4 years. 4 years of watching her breathe easier, of seeing her smile when she thought the rent was covered by some mysterious grace. 4 years of lying to my brother when he joked about how lucky mom was to afford this place on her salary. Here, quote. Seth the thing about secrets, though they're heavy. And the heavier they get, the more they warp the love they're meant to protect. I'd sit in my office crunching numbers for $1 million deals by day, then come home and stare at my own bank statements, wondering how long I could keep this up. Every promotion, every bonus, I funneled it into her rent, into the illusion that she was independent. I told myself it was worth it, that the way her shoulders relaxed when she talked about the future, the way she'd laugh without that old, exhausted edge, that was my payment. But love built on silence is a house of cards. And when the wind came, when I needed her, it didn't just fall, it shattered. And I'm left standing in the wreckage, wondering, was I ever really helping her? Or was I just another man in her life, making decisions for her without ever asking what she truly needed? Here's what I know now: resilience isn't just about surviving the storm. It's about learning which hands to hold when the waves hit, and which ones to let go of, no matter how much it breaks you. So ask yourself, who are you silently carrying? And what would happen if you finally put them down? The answer might just set you both free. Here's your script for chapter #03. Crafted to match the voice profile with precision. You know, when I look back at those years in corporate finance, I see two versions of myself: the one who thrived in boardrooms, and the one who quietly carried the weight of my family's survival. I was 25 when I landed my first real job at a prestigious firm, fresh out of grad school with a fire in my gut to prove I belonged. The numbers, the deals, the high-stakes negotiations, they were my escape. Every promotion, every late night at the office, every yes I forced out of a stubborn client wasn't just about my career, it was about the $2,400 I sent home every month like clockwork. The number I'd memorized like my own social security, that number was my mother's rent. And for 4 years, it was my secret mission. I remember the first time I saw my name on a six-figure deal. My hands shook as I signed the paperwork. Not because of the money, but because I knew that bonus meant 3 extra months of security for her. I'd skip lunches, wear the same 2 suits on rotation, and turn down happy hours with colleagues. Also, I could stretch my paycheck just a little further. My coworkers saw a rising star. My bank account told a different story. I was the guy who'd take the red eye to close a deal in Chicago, then immediately Venmo my mom before the plane even landed. The irony, she never once asked where the money came from, and I never once expected her to. But here's the thing about carrying two lives at once. Eventually, one of them starts to crack. There were nights I'd stare at my reflection in the office bathroom, wondering if I was building a career or just a very expensive facade. My boss called me relentless. My friends called me unavailable. My brother, he just called me lucky to have a job like mine. Little did he know, his luck was paying for the roof over his head too. I'd laugh it off, say I was just busy, but the truth was, I was exhausted. Not from the work, from the silence. From the way my mother's voice would light up when she thought I was calling to check in. When really, I was just confirming her landlord had gotten the payment. I told myself it was worth it. That one day she'd look at me with the same pride I felt when I saw her name on that lease agreement, stable for the first time in years, that my sacrifices would be the bridge between her past struggles and a future where she didn't have to choose between groceries and the electric bill. But bridges work both ways, don't they? And I was so focused on holding hers up that I never stopped to ask who's holding mine. Now I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because I need you to understand the kind of love that makes a person choose silence over recognition. The kind that turns a paycheck into a lifeline and a son into a silent partner in his mother's survival. But here's what I've learned the hard way. Love shouldn't cost you your voice and resilience. It's not just about how much you can carry. It's about knowing when to put something down. So if you're out there right now, stretching yourself thin for people who don't even know the shape of your sacrifice, ask yourself this: who's fighting for you the way you're fighting for them? Because real strength isn't measured by what you endure in silence. It's measured by the courage to finally speak up and the wisdom to know when to walk away. The floor beneath me gave way. I'll never forget the way the air left my lungs that afternoon. The email hit my inbox at 2:17 p.m. Subject line: Urgent restructuring announcement. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I scanned the words, my pulse hammering in my throat. Effective immediately. Final day. Transition package. The corporate jargon blurred into a single brutal truth: I was out. Just like that, the career I'd bled for, the one that let me sign those checks every month, the one that made me feel like someone was gone. The first wave wasn't anger, it was terror, pure, icy terror. Because in that moment, I wasn't just a 29-year-old finance professional with a severance package. I was a little girl again, standing in the doorway of our old apartment after the divorce, watching my mom cry over unpaid bills. Only this time, the bills were mine. The rent, the rent, the groceries, the carefully hidden transfers labeled "Mom, don't ask" in my bank app. For 4 years, I'd been the invisible foundation holding us up, and now the foundation was cracking. I locked myself in the office bathroom, gripping the sink until my knuckles burned. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like a swarm of insects, and I wanted to scream. Because here's the thing, no one tells you about sacrifice. It doesn't just cost you money, it costs you options. While my peers saved for down payments or splurged on vacations, I was funneling nearly half my take-home pay into an apartment I didn't live in, into a gratitude I'd never receive. And for what? So my mom could sleep easy? So my brother could pretend the world was fair? I told myself it was love, but standing there staring at my reflection, red-rimmed eyes, mascara smudged, I realized the truth: I'd been buying an illusion. The illusion that if I gave enough, I'd never be abandoned again. My phone buzzed.
a text from my best friend. Heard about the layoffs. You okay? I didn't reply. How could I explain that okay wasn't a word in my vocabulary anymore? That the rug had been yanked out from under me, and the fall wasn't just financial, it was existential. For the first time in years, I had to ask myself, who am I without this job? Without this role? Without this silent, suffocating duty? I called my mom that night. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. I lost my job. I need to come home for a little while. The pause that followed wasn't just silence, it was a verdict. And when she finally spoke, her words didn't just break my heart. They rewrote it but that's a pain for the next chapter. For now, I need you to sit with this. Have you ever built your entire life around being the strong one, only to realize too late that no one was holding you? That's where I was. And trust me, what came next would shatter me into someone new. So tell me, what's your breaking point? And when it comes, will you let it destroy you, or will you finally build something for yourself? There I was, phone pressed so hard against my ear it ached, my breath coming in uneven gasps as I dialed the number I'd called 1,000 times before. Always with love, always with the quiet hope that this time she'd see me. The line rang, once, twice, and then her voice, sharp as ever, cut through the silence. What's wrong now? Not, are you okay? Not, I've been thinking about you. Just that cold, efficient, like I was an interruption. And maybe I was. I swallowed the lump in my throat, my vision blurring as the weight of the words pressed down on me. Mom, I lost my job. The admission tore out of me, raw and trembling. The company downsized and my voice cracked. I don't know what to do. I was wondering if I could come home for a little while, just until I get back on my feet. There it was. The plea I'd never thought I'd have to make. The vulnerability I'd spent years burying under spreadsheets and wire transfers. All laid bare in that single shaky sentence. What followed wasn't comfort. It wasn't even hesitation. It was a pause so heavy it felt like a verdict. Then her sigh, long, exasperated, like I'd just asked her to carry a boulder up a mountain. Absolutely not. The words landed like a slap. I can't have you here right now. Your name. Your energy is too negative. You'll bring the whole house down. I could picture her, lips pursed, brow furrowed, as if my pain were a contagion she needed to quarantine. My hands shook. Mom, please. I have nowhere else to. That's not my problem. 3 syllables that shattered me. I sank onto the floor, my back against the cold wall of my now unaffordable apartment, the phone slipping in my grip. You've always been so dramatic, she continued, voice clipped. You'll figure it out. You always do. And then came the twist of the knife, so casual it stole my breath. Oh, by the way, did you send this month's money yet? The landlord's been calling. Something inside me snapped. The world tilted. What money? I whispered. She scoffed, impatient. You know what money? The rent. And that's when it hit me. She didn't even know. 4 years. 4 years of silently draining my savings, of skipping vacations, of pretending I didn't see the way my friends lived, while I funneled nearly $250,000 into her account. 4 years of thinking, she'll love me if I save her. And she didn't even realize. I've been paying your rent, I said, my voice hollow, for 4 years. The line went so quiet, I thought she'd hung up. Then, well, I never asked you to do that. No apology, no gratitude, just deflection. Like my sacrifice was an inconvenience I'd inflicted on her. I laughed, bitter, broken. No, you didn't. And then I hung up. In that moment, I understood the truth. Love shouldn't be a transaction. And if it is, it's not love at all. Maybe you've been there holding on to someone so tightly, you forget to ask if they're even holding back. Maybe you've poured everything into a relationship, only to realize you're the only one pouring. Here's what I need you to hear. Your worth isn't measured by what you can carry for others. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is set it down, walk away, and let the weight of your own heart be enough. The aftermath. When the ground gives way, I hung up the phone and stood there, frozen, like the air had been sucked out of the room.
My hands were still trembling, not from the layoff, not from the fear of unemployment, but from the way my own mother had just carved out a piece of me and left it bleeding on the floor. Your energy is too negative. Those words echoed in my skull, twisting into something uglier with every replay.
Because what she really meant was your pain is inconvenient. Your need is a burden. Your love, irrelevant. For 4 years, I had been her silent lifeline. 4 years of meticulously timed transfers, of watching my savings dwindle while she never once asked how, just accepted, like it was her birthright. And now, in the one moment I dared to ask for the same kindness, she didn't just say no, she made me feel like a stranger, like a mistake. The worst part? The voice in my head that whispered, maybe she's right. Maybe I was selfish for expecting gratitude. Maybe I should have just kept quiet, kept paying, kept pretending this was normal. That's the insidious thing about emotional debt. It doesn't just drain your bank account, it rewires your self worth. I spent that night on my couch, staring at the ceiling, calculating not just the $115,000 I'd sent her, but the cost of every birthday I'd missed saving for, every vacation I'd skipped, every no I'd told myself so she could have a yes. And for what? To be told my struggle was my problem. I wanted to scream. I wanted to send her those receipts right then, proof of my loyalty, my sacrifice, my love, and demand she see me. But another part of me, the part that had spent a lifetime being the responsible one, the strong one, hesitated. What if she still doesn't care? What if I handed her my heart on a platter, and she just shrugged? That's the paradox of loving someone who doesn't love you back the same way. You become both the martyr and the fool. And in that moment, I wasn't sure which hurt more, the betrayal, or the fact that I'd let it happen for so long. But here's what I know now. Silence is the currency of abuse. Whether it's financial, emotional, or both, staying quiet doesn't protect you, it protects them. And I was done protecting her at the cost of myself, Dawn. So I ask you, have you ever poured everything into someone only to realize they saw you as a resource, not a person? That's not love. That's a transaction. And you, my friend, are not for sale. The next call I made. It wasn't to apologize, it was to wake up. And that's where the real story begins. The moment everything shattered. I'll never forget the way my hands shook as I dialed her number that second time. The first call, the one where I begged for help, where I let myself be raw and broken in front of her, still echoed in my chest like a bruise. But this time was different. This time I wasn't asking, I was telling. And the weight of those 4 years of silence pressed down on me so hard I could barely breathe. I had rehearsed the words 100 times in my head, but when she answered, her voice casual, almost annoyed, my throat locked. Mom, we need to talk. She sighed, the way she always did when I was about to be dramatic. But then I said it. Do you know how I've been paying your rent for the last 4 years? The line went so quiet, I thought the call dropped. For a second, I hoped, please let this be the moment she realizes. But then she laughed. Not the warm, relieved kind, the kind that cuts. What are you talking about? I never asked you to do that. Like it was my fault for caring. Like my sacrifices were some kind of imposition on her. My voice cracked as I laid it out. The transfers, the dates, the $115,000 I'd sent while eating ramen in my studio apartment, while skipping vacations, while telling myself it was love. Her silence wasn't shock, it was calculation. And then the knife twist. Well, if you didn't want to, you could have stopped. As if love is a subscription you cancel when it's inconvenient. As if I hadn't spent years believing that if I just gave enough, she'd finally see me. The worst part,
The way she pivoted, are you saying you won't send this month's money? Not thank you. Not I'm sorry. Just accountability. Like I was her ATM, not her child. I hung up before she could say more, but the damage was done. Because in that moment I understood to her my worth wasn't in who I was. It was in what I provided, and when I couldn't give anymore, I became the problem. That call didn't just end with a dial tone, it ended with the sound of something inside me, snapping the last thread of a little girl who thought love was earned through silence and sacrifice. But here's what she didn't realize: that snap wasn't my breaking, it was my awakening. So if you're sitting there right now, holding on to a relationship that only takes and never gives, stop. Your worth isn't measured in what you endure, it's measured in the moment you finally say, enough. Walk away. Build a life where love isn't a transaction, because the right people, they won't make you beg for scraps of gratitude. They'll meet you at the table as an equal. And that's where healing begins. When my brother called, his voice was already shaking, not with tears but with a kind of rage I'd never heard from him before. What the hell did you do? He demanded, and for a second I thought he was attacking me. Then he clarified, Mom just told me she might lose the apartment because you stopped helping. She made it sound like you just abandoned her. But I know you wouldn't do that. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. I could hear his breathing on the other end, uneven, like he was pacing, so I did what I should have done years ago. I sent him the proof. 4 years of bank transfers, labeled Rent Mom's Apt like some twisted secret diary. His reaction wasn't just shock, it was a physical unraveling. I heard him sit down hard, the kind of thud that tells you someone's knees just gave out. Oh my God, he whispered.
oh my God, not because of the money though, that was staggering, but because he realized in that instant the depth of the lie we'd all been living. God, within hours, he was packing. He didn't just move out, he fled. Like the apartment itself was contaminated. Later, he told me he couldn't stand to look at her, that every shared meal, every "we're so lucky to have this place" now tasted like deception. His anger wasn't at me, it was at the system she'd built where gratitude was a one-way street. And love came with invisible strings, and yet, watching him leave, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. Not the clean, light kind, but the heavy, jagged relief of a truth finally surfacing, even if it left wreckage in its wake. But beneath that, a betrayal so deep it ached. Because part of me had hoped stupidly that when the truth came out, she'd break, that she'd call me sobbing, begging for forgiveness, proving that somewhere under the coldness, she was still my mother. Instead, she doubled down. Told our aunt I was manipulative for throwing money in her face. Told my cousin I'd always been dramatic. The family split like fault lines. Some called me selfish for airing dirty laundry. Others finally saw her. Here's the thing about carrying secrets for people. When you put them down, your hands don't just feel empty, they feel lighter. But the weight doesn't vanish, it redistributes. Now it's on them to decide what to do with the truth. My brother chose freedom. Our aunt chose denial. And me? I chose to stop apologizing for needing help. Because here's what 4 years of silence taught me: love shouldn't feel like a transaction. And if your own blood treats your kindness like a weakness, that's not your burden to fix. So ask yourself, what truths are you carrying that someone else should be holding? And when you finally put them down, who will still be standing beside you.
I guess that's where your real family begins, the weight of their words and the silence that followed. There's a kind of loneliness that comes when the people who are supposed to know you best suddenly become strangers. Not because they've changed, but because you've finally seen them clearly. And in that clarity, you realize just how alone you've been all along. The calls started coming the day after my brother moved out. First, it was Aunt Lisa, her voice trembling with that performative concern she reserves for family scandals. I don't understand why you just cut her off like that, sweetheart. She's your mother. You could have talked to her, given her a chance to adjust. I wanted to scream. Adjust? I'd been adjusting for 4 years, silencing my own needs, pretending I didn't see the way her nails were always freshly done while I ate ramen in my studio apartment, justifying her indifference as stress from the divorce. But when I tried to explain, Lisa sighed like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Money isn't love, honey. You can't buy her gratitude. No, I thought. But apparently I couldn't buy her decency either. Then there was Uncle Mark, who called me selfish point blank. His voice was cold, the kind of disappointment that sticks to your ribs. You knew she relied on that money. You pulled the rug out from under her on purpose. I laughed, bitter, disbelieving. Purpose? Like I'd orchestrated my own layoff just to punish her. Like I hadn't spent sleepless nights calculating how to stretch my severance while she texted me memes about hustle culture from the couch I'd indirectly paid for. When I sent him the payment records, he went quiet. Then quieter still. Why didn't you just tell us? That was the question that broke me. Because the truth was, I had told them in 100 unspoken ways. In the excuses I made when she forgot my birthday, in the way I flinched when she called me dramatic for wanting a simple thank you. But no one listens to silence. Not really. Cousin Jamie was the only one who showed up at my door with wine and a look that said, I see you. She'd been the quiet one at family gatherings, the one who noticed how mom's jokes about my weight or my career always left me gripping my fork too tight. I'm not surprised, she admitted, swirling her glass, but I am sorry, because now you have to grieve the mom you wished you had and the family that let it happen. That was the wound. No one else named the collective failure. The way they'd all tiptoed around her temper, her manipulation, because confronting it meant admitting they'd enabled it to. Here quotes what I've learned about family in the fire of their judgments. Loyalty without boundaries is just another word for self-betrayal and communication. It's not just about speaking, it's about being heard. I spent years whispering my pain in hopes someone would lean in, but real change didn't come until I stopped whispering. Until I let my voice shake with the weight of my truth, even if it made them uncomfortable. Even if it made me uncomfortable. So if you're sitting there right now, caught between the family you love and the truth you've swallowed for too long, ask yourself this: what does your silence cost you? Because I'll tell you what mine cost me: $115,000. My dignity and 4 years of believing love should feel like a debt. Your truth isn't selfish. It's the foundation of every relationship that's ever been worth fighting for. And if they can't hear it, then let them be the ones to adjust. There's a moment in every storm when the wind finally stills, just for a breath, and you realize the world hasn't ended. You're still standing. That's where I found myself after the phone call with my brother, after the texts from relatives, after the silence from my mom that spoke louder than any accusation.
The pain was still there, sharp and unrelenting, but something else had begun to rise beneath it. A quiet, unshakable certainty that I was no longer willing to drown in someone else's narrative of who I should be, that healing from this didn't happen in a straight line.
Some days I'd wake up and the betrayal would hit me like a wave, pulling me under before I could even sit up. Other days I'd feel this strange, almost foreign sense of lightness, like I'd shed a skin I didn't even know was suffocating me. The turning point came when I stopped asking myself why this happened and started asking what I was going to do with the broken pieces. That shift from victim to architect of my own healing was where the real work began. I journaled until my hands cramped, not just about the anger or the grief, but about the moments I'd ignored my own needs to keep the peace. I replayed conversations where I'd swallowed my truth to avoid conflict, and I forced myself to sit with the discomfort of admitting I'd enabled this dynamic. It wasn't just about her, it was about me too. Dot. The hardest lesson, standing firm in my truth, didn't mean I had to be cruel. It meant I had to be clear. Boundaries aren't walls, they're the framework that holds up the life you're trying to build. I learned that support isn't transactional. Real support doesn't come with strings or silent contracts. In communication, it's not just about speaking, it's about being heard, even when the truth makes others uncomfortable. I had to accept that some people would never validate my pain, and that was okay. Their inability to see me didn't diminish my worth. Dot. If you're sitting there right now, heart heavy with your own family storms, I need you to hear this. Your truth is not up for debate. The moment you stop shrinking to make room for someone else's comfort is the moment you start living for you. It won't be easy. There will be days you doubt yourself, days you miss the illusion of harmony. But on the other side of that doubt is a strength you didn't know you had, a resilience forged in the fire of standing alone. So stand, even if your voice shakes, even if the fallout feels unbearable, because the legacy you build from this won't be one of silence or sacrifice. It'll be one of choice. And that's how you break the cycle. Here's your script for chapter #11, written in exact alignment with the voice profile and video context. You know, when I look back at those 4 years of silent sacrifice, the $115,000 I poured into an apartment that was never truly mine to carry, I don't just see money, I see the weight of a legacy I thought I was building. One where loyalty meant swallowing my own needs, where love was measured in transactions no one acknowledged. But here's the truth, I had to claw my way to legacy. Isn't what you silently endure, it's what you courageously rewrite. And that starts with shattering the cycles that taught me my worth was tied to keeping others afloat while I drowned out. This experience didn't just reshape my view of family obligations, it incinerated the old blueprint. I used to believe responsibility meant shouldering burdens alone, that speaking up was selfish, but real responsibility, it's the brutal, beautiful work of saying, this is what I can give, and this is where I stop. It's understanding that love without transparency isn't love, it's a debt collector in disguise. My mother's reaction wasn't just about money, it was about a system where my silence was her security, and I refused to pass that baton to the next generation. If I ever have children, they'll know the sound of my voice, not my secrets. They'll learn that asking for help isn't weakness. It's how we build trust. Dot. So here's what I'm asking you to sit with. Where are you bleeding silently in the name of obligation? Maybe it's the sibling who takes but never thanks, the parent who critiques but never listens, the partner who benefits from your labor but calls you too sensitive when you speak up. Breaking the cycle isn't just about setting boundaries, it's about naming the unspoken contracts that bind you. Write them down, say them out loud, watch how the light changes when secrets stop being currency. This isn't about cutting ties, it's about rewiring how we connect. My brother and I, we're closer now than ever, not because we share a mother, but because we chose honesty over inherited silence. That's the legacy I'm building. One where my story isn't a cautionary tale, but a torch. So take this moment. Look at your hands. Are they clenched in fear or open to rewrite the rules? Your legacy starts with the courage to say, this ends with me. Now, what's the first cycle you'll break? Here's your script, raw, emotional, and unfiltered, just like the truth I had to face. There's a strange kind of freedom that comes when the walls you've built around your pain finally crumble
For years, I carried the weight of my mother's rent like a silent vow, something sacred, something that proved my love. But when that weight nearly crushed me, and the person I'd protected turned away, I realized the greatest betrayal wasn't hers. It was mine against myself, because I had spent so long begging for love in the form of sacrifice that I forgot the most radical act of love is telling the truth. I won't lie to you, this has been the hardest year of my life, not just because of the layoff or the rejection, or the way my family fractured under the weight of secrets, but because for the first time, I had to look at my own hands and ask, what was I really holding on to? Was it her, or was it the illusion that if I gave enough, silently, endlessly, I'd finally be worthy of the love I'd been starving for since I was a kid? The answer broke me open. And in that breaking, I found something I'd never let myself have before. Permission to need that here. Quotes what I know now. Resilience isn't just surviving the storm, it's learning to dance in the rain while it's still pouring. It's calling your brother at 2 a.m. to say, I was wrong to keep this from you, and hearing him say, I was wrong to never ask. It's realizing that the cycles we inherit, silence, martyrdom, the myth that love should hurt, don't have to be our legacy. We can rewrite them. But first, we have to stop lying to ourselves. I used to think strength meant swallowing my pain, so no one else had to taste it. Now I know real strength is spitting out the poison, even if your voice shakes. It's saying, I helped you because I loved you, but I won't disappear to keep you comfortable. It's understanding that when someone meets your vulnerability with cruelty, it doesn't mean you failed. It means they couldn't handle the light you were brave enough to shine. So here's my question for you, and I need you to feel this. Where are you still begging for love in the form of sacrifice? Where are you dimming yourself to keep someone else's world from tilting? Because I promise you, the love that demands your silence is not love. The family that requires your erasure does not deserve your loyalty. You are allowed to need. You are allowed to ask. You are allowed to walk away from a table that only sets a place for you when it's convenient. This isn't just about my mother. It's about every person who's ever made you feel like your worth was tied to what you could endure. Your resilience is not for them. It's for you. For the version of you that's still standing after the fire, still soft after the betrayal, still choosing to build something better. That's the legacy that matters. So today, I'm asking you to do one thing. Pick up the phone, send the text, have the conversation you've been terrified to have, not to change them, to free you. Because on the other side of that fear, there's a life where you don't have to earn love, where your needs aren't negotiations, where your truth isn't a weapon, but a bridge. And yeah, some people won't cross it. But the ones who do, they'll meet you in a place so much brighter than the shadows you've been hiding in. This is your permission slip. Stop waiting for them to change. Start demanding better for you. The world needs people who refuse to shrink, and that starts with you, right now, deciding that your healing is not selfish. It's sacred. Now go build the life that loves you back. So here I stand, raw, exposed, and strangely free after 4 years of silent sacrifice. After pouring over $100,000 into a love that never learned how to love me back. And yet, in this wreckage, I found something I never expected me. Not the version of myself who bled to keep others afloat, but the one who finally dared to ask, what about you? That question, whispered in the dark after my mother's words cut deeper than any layoff ever could, became the spark that ignited everything. Because here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Love isn't measured in what you give, but in what you're allowed to need. And for too long, I confused sacrifice with self-worth. This isn't just my story, It's the story of everyone who's ever stood in a storm of family expectations, hands outstretched, only to realize they're the only ones holding the umbrella. Maybe your version looks different. A parent who weaponized guilt, a sibling who took but never gave, a home where love was conditional, transactional. Maybe you too have sat in the silence of your own kindness, wondering why it never seemed to echo back. And if you're listening right now, heart pounding because this feels like your life, I need you to hear me. You are not selfish for needing. You are not ungrateful for wanting. You are not wrong for finally drawing a line in the sand and saying, "This ends with me," what my mother failed to understand. And what I'm only now beginning to grasp is that real love isn't a ledger. It isn't a favor bank where deposits earn you the right to withdraw care when you need it. Real love is the courage to say, "I see you, and I see me too." It's the messy, terrifying work of showing up as your full self even when the people who should have been your soft place turn out to have edges sharper than you imagined. And yes, it hurts. God, does it hurt. But here's the miracle: that pain. It's not the end of you, it's the birthplace of your boundaries. It's the fire that forges the kind of resilience no one can take from you. I won't lie and say this is easy. Some days I still wake up and reach for my phone, fingers hovering over her name, wondering if I should call, if I should explain again, if I should just fix it. But then I remember I already did. For 4 years I fixed it. And where did that leave me? Empty-handed and heartbroken on the floor of my studio apartment, staring at a ceiling that suddenly felt like the only thing holding me up. No more. I am done fixing what was never mine to carry. And if you're still shouldering the weight of a family that doesn't know how to hold you, I'm begging you, put it down. Not because you don't love them, but because you do love you. This is your permission slip to grieve the family you wished you had, to rage at the injustice of it all, to walk away if you must, and to do it all without guilt, because the greatest act of rebellion you can commit in a system that taught you to shrink is to take up space, to say, my needs matter, my pain matters, my story matters. And if they can't hear it, then build a life so loud with joy and self-respect that they won't be able to ignore it. That's the legacy worth leaving. Not the money, not the silence, but the unshakable knowledge that you chose you, and in doing so, you broke a cycle. That, my friend, is how you turn heartbreak into heritage. Now go. Start yours.